Welcome back to the Grade Center Basics series. This is part 2 of the 4-part series. This video will focus on total columns. We'll cover standard totals, we'll go through the column settings, and we'll explain what a running total is and what the external total is. Again, we'll start by navigating to the Full Grade Center. In our control panel, we'll click on Grade Center, Full Grade Center. By default, Blackboard has both a weighted total and a standard total column. The standard total column is labeled simply total. It will calculate a simple points earned out of points possible for students as you enter grades into the Grade Center columns. If we take a closer look at the total column by clicking on the column header drop menu and choosing Edit Column Information, we see a few settings for the total column. Some of these settings are similar to column settings on manually created columns and automatically created columns. We have a column name, we don't need a Grade Center name, and we have a description. We also have those primary and secondary displays. For the total column, it's especially important that we set the primary display, the one that students can see, to something that they can understand. So we're going to set this one to percentage. Looking at the other settings, we're going to leave the calculation setting to all grade columns. This means it'll include all of the columns that we have either manually created or were automatically created in Grade Center. In the weighted grades video, we'll see something a little bit different. We're going to leave this as a running total. That's the default setting. And what that means is that students will be scored based on the number of points for the work that they've been graded on so far in the course. So if only one assignment has been graded, their grade will be equal to the grade that they got for that assignment. If we set that to no, then students will be scored based on the number of points possible for the entire course. So basically everyone will start out with an F and they'll have to work their way up. As you can imagine, this would be very distressing and confusing for students. So we're going to leave the running total as yes. Because of the way the running total calculates based on what's been graded, it's important that you remember to enter a 0 for work that students don't complete. Not entering the 0 at the end of the semester will basically exempt students from that assignment. So if they don't complete the work, it won't count against them unless you enter that 0. If you don't enter the 0, it's like it was never even assigned. In section 4, we'll include it in calculations. We can choose whether or not to display the column to students. It's not often that we find that we would hide a column from students, but that can come up from time to time. In this case, we're going to leave that set to yes, and the final option, setting that to yes, will show students the average score for the entire class. And it's just not something that we see done very often, but it's certainly there if you'd like to make that available to students. Now that we have our total column all set, we're going to click Submit. We're back in Grade Center. Now, because only the primary display shows to students, we might want to create another total column for students. Say we've set our total column to display percentage, but we want students to know what that equates to in letter. So we can create a total column for letter. To do that, from the Create Calculated Column, we'll select Total Column. We'll give this one the name Letter Grade. Again, the Grade Center name is not necessary because it will default to the column name. We can provide a description if you'd like. And we're going to set this to letter. We're not going to choose a secondary display for this one, and we're going to leave the rest of the options default. We're going to go ahead and click Submit. And back in the Full Grade Center, if we scroll over, we can see our letter grade column is there. Finally, we're going to talk about the external grade column setting. You may have noticed that there's a green check mark on the total column. By default, this is the column that's set as the external grade. The external grade is the column that's shown to students on their My Courses screen in their grades area, so that it tells them what their overall grade is. So that we want to set that typically to our total column or our weighted total column or whatever the overall grade column for the student is. It's also the column that will be used in the wizard when you submit your midterm and final grades through Access OTC. So you want to make sure that's on an overall grade column. We can change the external column fairly easily. You just find the column you'd like to set it to and choose Set as External Grade. Then you'll see that check mark moves over. One important thing to note is that the external column can't be deleted. So if you're using weighted grades and you need to delete the standard total to avoid confusion for students, you'll want to make the weighted total the external grade first, and then you'll be able to delete the total column. Alright, we've covered column settings, creating standard total columns. We've discussed what the running total does and what the external column is. Hopefully this has answered some of your questions that you may have had about Grade Center. Be sure to check out part 3 if you plan to use weighted grades, or skip to part 4 if you're not planning to use weighted grades. And as always, be awesome.